Hello there, and welcome. Perhaps you've had one of those long days where your mind feels too full, too awake, or maybe you're simply someone who finds comfort in drifting off to gentle mysteries rather than absolute silence. Either way, tonight's journey is waiting for you. You have nothing to do right now but let your shoulders drop, your breathing slow, and your thoughts begin to wander like currents moving through dark water. Because tonight we're slipping beneath the surface into a world that most people imagine as perfectly silent. But the deep ocean, it turns out, hums with sound. Soft rumbles, distant calls, and whispers that travel for hundreds of miles through the dark. Did you know that in the deepest parts of the sea, sound can be heard more clearly than anywhere else on Earth? In this quiet journey, we'll drift through the strange and beautiful sounds of the ocean's depths, from the songs of whales to the crackling of ice, from volcanic rumbles to the mysterious noises that scientists still can't fully explain. But before we jump in, if you enjoy learning about our oceans, you're welcome to let us know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories reach, and if these quiet ocean journeys help you unwind, you're always welcome to subscribe so you can drift off with us whenever you need. Now let your body grow a little heavier as we begin. Most people think of the deep sea as a place of absolute silence. After all, it's dark down there, cold and vast beyond imagining. The kind of emptiness that seems like it should be quiet, but the ocean is anything but silent. In fact, it's one of the noisiest environments on the planet, filled with a constant symphony of sounds that most of us will never hear. To understand why the ocean is so loud, we need to understand how sound itself behaves underwater, and it behaves very differently than it does in air. Sound is simply energy moving through a medium as waves of pressure. In air, sound travels at roughly 1100 feet per second. But in water, sound moves nearly 5 times faster, racing through the liquid at almost 5,000 feet per second. This happens because water molecules are packed much more tightly together than air molecules, allowing vibrations to pass from one to the next with far greater efficiency. The denser the medium, the faster sound can travel. And the ocean, with its salt, its minerals, and its incredible pressure at depth, creates an environment where sound doesn't just travel quickly, it travels far, incredibly far. In the air, a shout might carry a few hundred feet before fading into nothing, but in the ocean, a low-frequency call from a whale can travel across entire ocean basins, journeying thousands of miles from where it began. This happens partly because of how well water conducts sound, but also because of a natural phenomenon discovered during the Cold War, something called the SOFAR channel. SOFAR stands for sound fixing and ranging, and it's a layer of the ocean where sound gets trapped and carried for extraordinary distances with almost no loss of energy. The SOFAR channel exists because of the way temperature and pressure change as you descend through the ocean. Near the surface, the water is warm from the sun's heat. As you go deeper, the temperature drops steadily until you reach a point, usually somewhere between 600 and 1200 meters down, where the water is at its coldest. Below that depth, pressure begins to dominate. And while colder water normally slows sound down, increasing pressure speeds it back up again. The result is a sweet spot, a zone where sound speed hits a minimum. And in that zone, sound waves get refracted, bent back toward the center of the channel every time they try to escape upward or downward. They become trapped in a horizontal corridor, a natural waveguide that can carry whispers across oceans. During World War II, the United States Navy became very interested in underwater sound. They were hunting submarines, listening for the rumble of enemy engines in the deep. To do this, they wired the oceans with a vast network of underwater microphones called hydrophones, creating a surveillance system known as SOSUS, the Sound Surveillance System. These hydrophones sat on the ocean floor, silent sentinels, listening to everything that passed overhead, and they heard things, lots of things. Not just submarines, but whales singing, underwater volcanoes erupting, earthquakes rumbling through the seafloor, icebergs cracking apart in the polar seas. After the Cold War ended, scientists gained access to some of this data, and what they discovered amazed them. The ocean wasn't just alive with biological sound, it was alive with geological sound, with the planet itself speaking in deep, resonant tones that had been traveling unheard for millennia. Today, hydrophones are still used all over the world, though now they're as likely to be tracking whales and studying marine ecosystems as they are monitoring for security threats. These devices are remarkably simple in concept, just underwater microphones that convert pressure waves into electrical signals. But they've opened up an entirely new way of seeing the ocean, one that doesn't rely on light at all. Because in the deep sea, light is useless. Sunlight penetrates only the first few hundred meters of the ocean. Below that, darkness is total and permanent. But sound travels beautifully. And for the creatures that live in the deep, sound is everything. It's how they navigate, how they find food, how they communicate with others of their kind across distances that would be impossible to see. The ambient noise of the ocean, what scientists call the background soundscape, is a constantly shifting mosaic. At any given moment, it's made up of countless overlapping sources. There's the hiss and crackle of rain falling on the surface miles above, the low rumble of waves breaking on distant shores, the clicks and whistles of dolphins hunting in packs, the deep moans of baleen whales calling to one another across the void, the grinding of tectonic plates shifting along mid-ocean ridges, the bubbling hiss of hydrothermal vents spewing superheated water into the cold abyss. And increasingly, there's the noise of humanity, the throb of ship engines, the ping of sonar, the roar of underwater construction. But even in the quietest parts of the ocean, far from shipping lanes and coastal activity, the sea is never truly silent. There's always something, some faint hum or distant crackle, some reminder that the ocean is alive not just with creatures, but with processes, with the slow grinding machinery of the earth itself. And for those who have learned to listen, the ocean's soundscape tells stories. Stories of migration and mating, of birth and death, of geological upheaval and ancient rhythms that predate human civilization by millions of years. The ocean's sounds exist across an enormous range of frequencies, from the ultra-low infrasonic rumbles of earthquakes and massive whales too deep for human ears to detect, all the way up to the ultrasonic clicks of dolphins and porpoises too high-pitched for us to hear. Hydrophones are designed to capture this entire spectrum, recording sounds that span from just a few hertz, the frequencies of the Earth's deepest vibrations, up to hundreds of thousands of hertz, the realm of echolocation and high-frequency communication. And when you listen to these recordings, when you hear the ocean as it truly sounds, you realize just how limited our human perception really is. We walk along beaches and hear the crash of waves, the cry of seagulls, the distant hum of a boat engine. But beneath the surface, a whole other world is unfolding, one that speaks in frequencies and rhythms we were never built to perceive. Scientists who study underwater acoustics, who spend their careers listening to the ocean, often describe it as a kind of telescope, not for seeing, but for hearing, a way to peer into the deep without ever leaving the surface. Because while our eyes can barely see a few meters through murky water, our ears, amplified by technology, can hear across entire ocean basins. We can listen to a whale singing off the coast of Hawaii while sitting in a laboratory in Massachusetts. We can detect an underwater volcano erupting near Antarctica from hydrophones anchored thousands of miles away in the Pacific. The ocean is transparent to sound in a way it will never be to light, and that transparency has allowed us to discover things we never would have known existed. If there's one sound that has captured human imagination more than any other from the deep sea, it's the song of the whale. These are voices that carry through the darkness with a haunting, almost otherworldly beauty. Voices that speak of something vast and ancient, of minds that experience the ocean in ways we can barely comprehend. Whales have been singing for millions of years, long before the first humans walked the earth, and they'll likely still be singing long after we're gone, their melodies drifting through the deep like memories of a world that once was. The loudest animal on earth is not an elephant or a lion. It's the blue whale, the largest creature ever to have lived on this planet. Blue whales produce calls that can reach 188 decibels, louder than a jet engine, louder than most rock concerts. But these aren't sharp, piercing sounds. They're deep, resonant pulses that vibrate through the water at frequencies so low that humans can barely hear them. Most blue whale calls sit between 10 and 40 hertz, well below the lower limit of human hearing, which starts around 20 hertz. When scientists play back recordings of blue whale songs at higher speeds, the sounds become audible to us, transformed into low moans and rumbles that seem to come from somewhere ancient and deep. But why do blue whales sing so loudly? The answer lies in the nature of the ocean itself. Blue whales are solitary creatures, often separated from one another by hundreds of miles of open water. They need to communicate across these vast distances to find mates, coordinate movements, and maintain some sense of social connection in the enormous emptiness of the sea. Their low-frequency calls are perfectly suited for this. Low-frequency sounds travel farther through water than high-frequency sounds, which get absorbed and scattered more quickly. A blue whale's call, traveling through the SOFAR channel, can potentially be heard by other blue whales thousands of miles away. It's a form of communication that spans distances almost beyond human comprehension, a conversation that unfolds across entire oceans over days and weeks. Blue whales aren't the only ones singing, of course. Fin whales, nearly as large and just as elusive, produce their own low-frequency pulses, rhythmic and repetitive, like the slow beat of a distant drum. These calls have been described as some of the most powerful sounds in the animal kingdom, traveling across ocean basins with an efficiency that rivals even the blue whale. For decades, these sounds puzzled scientists. They would appear on recordings as steady, pulsing tones, occurring at regular intervals, sometimes for hours at a time. It took years of research to confirm that they were coming from fin whales, and even longer to begin understanding what they might mean. Then there are the humpback whales, perhaps the most famous singers of all. Humpback songs are not simple calls or pulses. They are complex, structured compositions that can last for 20 minutes or more, repeated over and over again in extended sessions that sometimes go on for hours. A humpback song is made up of individual sounds called units, which are combined into phrases, which are then arranged into themes, which together form the complete song. It's a hierarchical structure remarkably similar to human language or music, with patterns and repetitions that suggest something far more sophisticated than random noise. What makes humpback songs even more remarkable is that they change over time. All the males in a given population will sing more or less the same song at any given moment, but that song evolves, slowly and steadily, as the season progresses. A phrase that began as a rising tone might gradually flatten out over the course of weeks or months. A unit that was loud might become softer, or vice versa. And over the course of a few years, the song can change so dramatically that it becomes almost unrecognizable. This cultural evolution, this passing down and gradual transformation of musical patterns, is something that was once thought to be unique to humans. But humpback whales have been doing it for as long as we've been listening, and likely far longer. Why do humpback whales sing? The prevailing theory is that it's related to mating, that males sing to attract females or to compete with other males for breeding opportunities. But the truth is, we don't fully understand. Humpback songs are heard most often during the breeding season, which supports the mating hypothesis. But they're also heard at other times of year, in other contexts. Some researchers have suggested that the songs might serve multiple purposes, functioning as a form of navigation, a way to map the underwater landscape through sound, or even as a kind of cultural transmission, a way for whales to pass information between generations. Recent research has proposed an even more intriguing possibility, that humpback whales might be using their songs as a form of echolocation, streaming continuous sounds into the water and listening to the returning echoes to track the movements of other whales over vast distances. If true, this would mean that humpback songs aren't music at all, at least not in the way we think of music. They would be a kind of sonar, a way of seeing through sound, of painting a picture of the ocean and everything in it through the echoes that bounce back. It's a theory that challenges much of what we thought we knew, and it reminds us just how much we still have to learn about these extraordinary creatures. Sperm whales, the largest of the toothed whales, communicate in a completely different way. Instead of songs or long calls, they produce rapid sequences of clicks, sharp, percussive sounds that echo through the water like someone tapping on a hollow log. These clicks are produced in the whale's massive head, in a structure called the spermaceti organ, which focuses the sound into a directed beam. Sperm whales use these clicks for echolocation, sending out pulses of sound and listening to the echoes to locate prey in the pitch-black depths where they hunt. But they also use clicks to communicate with one another, and these communicative clicks are organized into patterns called codas, rhythmic sequences that vary between different social groups. Each sperm whale family, or clan, has its own distinct set of codas, a vocal signature that identifies them to others of their kind. It's analogous to a dialect in human language, a way of saying, "This is my family, this is my group." These are the sounds that mark us as distinct from others. And just like human dialects, these codes are learned, passed down from mothers to calves over generations. A young sperm whale grows up hearing the clicks and patterns of its family and gradually learns to produce them itself, integrating into the acoustic culture of its clan. The ocean is filled with the voices of these giants, layered and overlapping, creating a soundscape that is at once alien and strangely familiar. When you listen to recordings of whale songs, there's something about them that feels almost human, almost like language, like music, like something trying to reach across the vast gulf that separates us. And perhaps that's what they are. Not attempts to communicate with us, certainly, but expressions of something deeper, something that transcends species. The need to connect, to reach out, to say I am here in the vast emptiness of the world, and I am not alone. Not all the sounds that come from the deep ocean are easily explained. Over the decades, hydrophone networks have picked up dozens of mysterious noises, sounds that don't match anything we know, sounds that seem to emerge from nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Some of these sounds have been identified, traced back to their sources through years of careful research, but others remain puzzles, whispers from the abyss that we can hear but cannot yet understand. Perhaps the most famous of these mysterious sounds is the bloop. In the summer of 1997, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, detected an extremely loud, ultra-low frequency sound emanating from a remote region of the South Pacific Ocean, west of the southern tip of South America. The sound was picked up by multiple hydrophones placed thousands of miles apart, which meant it had to be extraordinarily powerful. When researchers played back the recording at faster speeds to make it audible to human ears, it produced a sound that rose and fell in frequency, a kind of ascending and descending tone that someone described as a bloop. The name stuck. The bloop was unlike anything scientists had heard before. Its frequency profile suggested it might be biological, similar in some ways to the calls of large whales, but it was far, far louder than any whale call ever recorded. If it had come from an animal, that animal would have had to be many times larger than a blue whale, which is already the largest animal known to exist. The discovery sparked intense speculation. Was there some unknown creature lurking in the deep ocean, something massive and undiscovered? The idea captured the public imagination, feeding into old myths about sea monsters and giant squids, about things hidden in the depths that we had not yet found. For years, the bloop remained a mystery. Scientists studied the recordings, analyzed the frequency patterns, tried to triangulate the source location. The sound seemed to originate from somewhere near Point Nemo, one of the most remote spots in the ocean, farther from land than almost any other point on Earth. Coincidentally, this is also the region where H.P. Lovecraft's fictional city of R'lyeh was said to rest, home to the slumbering cosmic entity Cthulhu. The coincidence only added to the mystique, and soon the internet was filled with theories about unknown monsters waking from ancient sleep. But in 2005, NOAA's scientists deployed additional hydrophones closer to Antarctica, specifically to listen for sounds associated with ice, and what they found solved the mystery. The bloop, it turned out, was not the voice of a sea monster. It was the sound of ice. Specifically, it was an icequake, the sharp crack and rumble of a massive iceberg breaking away from an Antarctic glacier and tumbling into the sea. This process, called calving, happens when glaciers reach the ocean and chunks of ice, sometimes as large as buildings or even small cities, fracture and collapse into the water. The sudden release of energy creates a sound that can be heard across enormous distances, a deep, resonating boom that travels through the ocean like thunder. Icequakes produce sounds that are very similar to biological calls in their frequency structure. They rise and fall in pitch, they vary in intensity, and they can be extraordinarily loud. The bloop, in all its mystery and intrigue, was simply a particularly large and powerful calving event, one that happened to be picked up by hydrophones, designed to listen for exactly these kinds of geological phenomena. With global warming accelerating the rate of glacial melting, icequakes like the bloop are becoming more common, as more and more ice breaks away from the polar regions and crashes into the sea. The bloop was not the only mysterious sound. In 2014, autonomous underwater gliders detected another strange noise near the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean. This sound, later named the bioquang, was equally puzzling. It consisted of two components: a low-frequency moan combined with a higher-frequency metallic twang, almost like something out of science fiction. Researchers described it as sounding like the original Star Trek Enterprise, a low rumble followed by a sharp, oscillating ping. Like the bloop, the bioquang was initially unidentified, and speculation ran wild about what could be producing such an unusual noise. It took years, but eventually scientists were able to match the biowang to a specific source, using a combination of underwater gliders, passive acoustic monitoring, and direct observation. They discovered that the sound was being produced by Bride's whales, a species of baleen whale that inhabits tropical and subtropical waters. Bride's whales are elusive and difficult to study, and their vocalizations were not well documented. The biowang, it turned out, was a unique call specific to a particular population of Bride's whales in the western North Pacific. The discovery not only solved the mystery of the sound, but also provided valuable insights into the movements and behavior of these rarely observed animals. By tracking the biowang, researchers could follow the whales as they moved through different regions, responding to changes in ocean temperature and the distribution of their prey. Other mysterious sounds have been detected over the years, each with its own peculiar characteristics. There was the upsweep, a long-duration sound first recorded in the early 1990s, consisting of narrow band tones that rise in frequency over time. Unlike the bloop or the biotwang, the upsweep is not a one-time event. It's a continuous sound present in the ocean for years on end, though its intensity varies with the seasons. Researchers believe the upsweep is associated with underwater volcanic activity, possibly coming from a chain of underwater volcanoes in the South Pacific, but its exact source has never been pinpointed. Then there's the whistle, a high-frequency sound that resembles, well, a whistle, sharp and clear and brief. And the slowdown, a sound that starts at a high frequency and slowly decreases over several minutes, like something winding down or coming to a stop. And the train, which sounds exactly like what its name suggests, a low rumble that builds and fades like a distant locomotive passing in the night. Some of these sounds have been tentatively linked to icebergs dragging across the ocean floor, or to underwater volcanic vents opening and closing, or to large-scale ocean currents shifting and grinding against one another. But for others, the explanations are still incomplete, still speculative, still waiting for more data and better technology. What these mysterious sounds remind us is that the ocean is vast, far vaster than we can fully comprehend, and much of it remains unexplored. We've mapped the surface of Mars in greater detail than we've mapped the floor of our own oceans. And in the parts we haven't seen, in the deep trenches and remote abyssal plains, there are processes happening, events unfolding, that we can only glimpse through the sounds they make. The ocean is speaking to us, in voices both familiar and strange, and we are only beginning to learn its language. The Earth is not a static place. Beneath the ocean, the planet's crust is constantly in motion, shifting and fracturing and renewing itself in a slow, inexorable dance that has been going on for billions of years. And this motion, this geological restlessness creates sound, deep, powerful sound that resonates through the water and rock, carrying the pulse of the Earth itself. Most of the volcanic activity on our planet happens underwater. The mid-ocean ridges, vast underwater mountain ranges that snake across the ocean floor like the seams of a baseball, are where new crust is born. Here, tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, and magma from deep within the Earth rises up to fill the gap, cooling and solidifying to form new seafloor. This process is happening constantly, all around the world, and it's far from silent. When magma erupts underwater, it doesn't create the explosive pyroclastic flows we see in volcanic eruptions on land. Instead, it oozes out in thick, pillow-like formations, rapidly cooling in contact with the frigid seawater. But even though the process is different, it still produces sound, lots of it. The rumble of magma moving through cracks in the crust, the hiss and crackle of superheated rock meeting ice-cold water, the deep, resonant boom of gas bubbles escaping from the molten material and bursting at the surface. All of these sounds combine to create a signature that hydrophones can detect from hundreds or even thousands of miles away. In the 1990s, scientists using the SALSUS network made a groundbreaking discovery. They were able to detect and track an underwater volcanic eruption in real time, something that had never been done before. The eruption was happening along the Juan de Fuca Ridge, a tectonic spreading center off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. Hydrophones picked up a series of sharp rhythmic sounds, low-frequency pulses, that suggested magma was being extruded from the seafloor. By triangulating the source of the sounds using multiple hydrophone arrays, researchers were able to pinpoint the location of the eruption with remarkable precision, even though it was happening more than a mile beneath the surface in complete darkness. This discovery revolutionized the study of underwater volcanism. For the first time, scientists could monitor submarine eruptions as they happened, listening to the sounds of the Earth's crust being reborn in real time. They could track the progress of the eruption, measure its intensity, and even predict when it might be winding down, all without sending a single submersible to the site. Sound had become a window into a world that was previously almost entirely invisible. Hydrothermal vents, those strange and alien ecosystems that form where superheated water gushes out of the seafloor, also produce distinctive sounds. These vents, often called black smokers because of the dark plumes of mineral-rich water they emit, are found near active volcanic regions on the ocean floor. Cold seawater seeps down through cracks in the crust, gets heated to temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Fahrenheit by the magma below, and then shoots back up through chimney-like structures, carrying with it a rich stew of dissolved minerals and chemicals. For a long time, scientists assumed that hydrothermal vents were silent, just passively releasing hot water into the surrounding ocean. But in the early 2000s, researchers lowered hydrophones directly next to several black smoker vents and discovered that they were anything but quiet. The vents produce a constant broadband rumble, a low-frequency noise that sits between 5 and 15 Hz, and they also emit narrow-band tones at higher frequencies, between 10 and 250 Hz. These sounds are thought to be caused by the turbulent flow of water through the vent structures, by the vibration of the chimney walls as fluid rushes past, and by the collapse and reformation of mineral deposits as they precipitate out of the superheated water. Each hydrothermal vent has a unique acoustic signature, a sonic fingerprint determined by its size, shape, and the rate at which water is flowing through it. By listening to these sounds, scientists can monitor the activity of vent systems over time, detecting changes in flow rate, shifts in temperature, and even the formation of new vents or the collapse of old ones. It's a form of remote sensing that allows researchers to study these environments without disturbing the delicate ecosystems that thrive around them. But it's not just the vents themselves that make noise. The creatures that live around them, the tube worms and crabs and shrimp and other strange organisms that have adapted to survive in this hostile environment, also contribute to the soundscape. The clicking of shrimp claws, the scraping of crab legs against rock, the subtle vibrations of tube worms swaying in the currents. All of these sounds combine to create a rich and complex acoustic environment, a symphony of life in one of the most extreme habitats on Earth. Earthquakes, too, produce powerful underwater sounds. When tectonic plates grind against one another, releasing centuries of built-up stress in a sudden violent motion, the energy radiates outward in all directions, both as seismic waves traveling through the rock and as acoustic waves traveling through the water. Underwater earthquakes, especially large ones, can be detected by hydrophones thousands of miles away, their deep rumbles carrying across entire ocean basins with little attenuation. The Pacific Ocean, ringed by the Pacific Ring of Fire, a zone of intense tectonic and volcanic activity, is particularly noisy. On any given day, there are dozens of small earthquakes happening somewhere along the Ring of Fire, each one sending out its own unique acoustic signature. Most of these are too small to be felt on land, but they're easily picked up by underwater listening stations, contributing to the constant background hum of the ocean's soundscape. Larger earthquakes, the ones that make headlines and trigger tsunamis, produce sounds that are almost beyond comprehension, deep infrasonic rumbles that can circle the globe multiple times before finally fading away. Listening to these geological sounds, to the pulse of the Earth itself, gives us a perspective that is both humbling and awe-inspiring. The planet we live on is not a static, unchanging place. It is alive in its own way, constantly shifting, constantly renewing itself, constantly speaking in a language of stone and fire and water. And we, with our hydrophones and our curiosity, are learning to listen. Not all the sounds in the ocean come from giants or from the Earth itself. Some of the loudest, most pervasive noises are produced by creatures so small you could hold dozens of them in the palm of your hand. Shrimp, fish, and countless other marine organisms create a constant background chatter that fills the ocean with life, a reminder that even the smallest voices can be heard when they speak together. Snapping shrimp, Tiny crustaceans that live in shallow coastal waters and coral reefs are among the loudest invertebrates in the ocean. These shrimp, usually no more than an inch or two long, have one oversized claw that they can snap shut with incredible speed. When they do, the claw creates a cavitation bubble, a tiny pocket of water vapor that forms and then collapses in a fraction of a second. The collapse of this bubble produces a sharp, loud crack that can reach 200 decibels, louder than a gunshot in air. It's a sound designed to stun prey, to defend territory, and to communicate with other shrimp. Individually, the snap of a single shrimp is impressive, but snapping shrimp don't live alone. They live in colonies, sometimes containing thousands or even millions of individuals, all snapping away more or less constantly. The cumulative effect is a sound that dominates the shallow water soundscape in many parts of the world, a continuous crackling hiss that's been compared to the sound of bacon frying or popcorn popping. It's so loud and so pervasive that it can interfere with sonar systems, masking other sounds and making it difficult for submarines to operate undetected in shallow coastal waters. During World War II, submarine crews reportedly used beds of snapping shrimp as acoustic camouflage, hiding their vessels in the noise to avoid detection by enemy hydrophones. Fish, too, are far more vocal than most people realize. For a long time, the ocean was thought to be largely silent when it came to fish, but research over the past few decades has revealed that many species produce sounds for a variety of purposes. Some fish grunt or croak by vibrating their swim bladders, gas-filled organs that help them control buoyancy. Others produce sounds by grinding their teeth together or by rubbing specialized bones against one another. These sounds are used in courtship, in territorial disputes, and in maintaining cohesion within schools. Certain species are particularly loud. The toadfish, for example, produces a long, droning hum that can last for several seconds, a sound that males use to attract females during the breeding season. The hum is produced by rapidly contracting muscles attached to the swim bladder, causing it to vibrate like the membrane of a drum. In quiet coastal bays where toadfish are abundant, their collective humming can be heard above the water's surface on calm nights, a strange, otherworldly chorus rising from the shallows. Croakers, drums, and other members of the cyanid family are also known for their vocal abilities. These fish produce loud drumming or croaking sounds, again using specialized muscles to vibrate their swim bladders. In some regions, large aggregations of these fish create such a loud chorus that it can be heard from boats and even from shore. The collective sound of thousands of drumming fish has been described as sounding like a fleet of motorcycles idling in the distance, a low, rumbling roar that ebbs and flows with the movements of the school. Dolphins and porpoises, though not fish, are also major contributors to the ocean's acoustic environment. These highly intelligent marine mammals use sound in almost every aspect of their lives, from navigation to hunting to social interaction. Dolphins produce a wide variety of sounds, including whistles, clicks, and burst pulse sounds, each serving a different purpose. Whistles are primarily used for communication, with each dolphin developing a unique signature whistle that functions almost like a name, allowing individuals to identify one another even when visibility is poor. Clicks, on the other hand, are used for echolocation. Dolphins emit rapid sequences of clicks, sometimes hundreds per second, and listen to the echoes that bounce back from objects in the water. By analyzing these echoes, dolphins can build a detailed mental picture of their surroundings, detecting the size, shape, distance, and even internal structure of objects around them. It's a form of sensory perception that humans simply don't have, a way of seeing the world through sound with a precision that rivals or even exceeds vision. Echolocation clicks are incredibly loud, often exceeding 200 decibels at the source, loud enough to stun or even kill small fish. Dolphins use this to their advantage when hunting, directing their clicks at schools of fish to disorient them before moving in for the kill. It's a hunting technique that's both elegant and brutally efficient, and it highlights just how powerful sound can be as a tool. Even the smallest creatures, the plankton and invertebrates that drift through the water column, contribute to the ocean's soundscape. Tiny crustaceans called copepods, for example, produce faint clicking sounds as they move through the water, the result of their legs and antennae vibrating as they swim. Individually, these sounds are almost inaudible, but in a dense bloom of copepods, numbering in the millions or billions, the cumulative effect can be detected by sensitive hydrophones. a faint, high-frequency rustle that speaks to the sheer abundance of life in the open ocean. The collective sound of all these small creatures, from shrimp to fish to dolphins to plankton, creates a biological chorus that varies by location, by time of day, and by season. Coral reefs are particularly noisy, filled with the snaps and pops and grunts of countless organisms going about their daily lives. In contrast, the open ocean, far from reefs and coasts, tends to be quieter, though still far from silent. And in the deep sea, where food is scarce and life is more spread out, the biological soundscape becomes sparser, more intermittent, punctuated by the occasional click of a sperm whale or the distant call of a passing whale pod. This symphony of small creatures is a reminder that sound in the ocean is not just about the big, charismatic animals, it's about the entire ecosystem, about the countless interactions between species, about the way life fills every available niche and makes itself heard, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. The ocean is alive with voices, and they all matter. In the polar regions, where the ocean meets the ice, there is another kind of sound, one that speaks to the slow, grinding processes of climate and geology. Ice is not silent. It creaks and groans and cracks and booms, producing sounds that can travel for hundreds of miles through the cold water, sounds that are both beautiful and haunting in their strangeness. Ice forms on the ocean's surface when temperatures drop low enough for seawater to freeze. But seawater doesn't freeze easily. It has to be very cold, well below the freezing point of fresh water, because the salt in the water lowers its freezing temperature. When it does freeze, it forms a thin layer of ice crystals that gradually thickens as more water freezes beneath it. This ice can grow to be several meters thick in the Arctic and Antarctic, forming vast sheets that cover millions of square miles. As the ice thickens and the temperature continues to drop, it contracts, pulling tighter and tighter. But ice is not infinitely flexible. Eventually, the stress becomes too great, and the ice fractures, cracking open in long, jagged lines that run for miles across the frozen surface. These cracks release stored energy in a sudden burst, producing a sharp, resonant boom that echoes through the water below. These are icequakes, the same phenomenon that produced the famous bloop sound back in 1997. Icequakes are not rare. They happen constantly in the polar regions, particularly during the winter months, when temperatures are at their lowest and the ice is under the most stress. Some are small, producing faint crackles that are barely audible. Others are enormous, releasing as much energy as a moderate earthquake and producing sounds that can be detected by hydrophones on the other side of the planet. The largest icequakes, the ones associated with the calving of massive icebergs from glaciers, are some of the loudest natural sounds in the ocean, rivaling even the calls of blue whales in their intensity. Calving is the process by which chunks of ice break away from the edge of a glacier and fall into the sea. It happens when a glacier reaches the ocean and continues to flow forward, pushed by the weight of ice accumulating behind it. Eventually, the leading edge becomes unsupported, jutting out over the water like a massive frozen overhang. Gravity does the rest. The ice cracks, splinters, and tumbles into the sea in a thunderous cascade, sending up huge plumes of spray and creating waves that ripple outward from the impact site. The sound of calving is complex, made up of multiple components. There's the initial crack, a sharp, high-frequency snap as the ice fractures. Then there's the rumble, a deep, low-frequency boom as the ice hits the water. And finally there's the sustained roar, a chaotic mix of splashing, grinding, and echoing that can last for several minutes as the newly formed iceberg settles into the water and begins to drift away. Each of these components contributes to the overall acoustic signature, creating a sound that is unmistakable and unforgettable. But calving is not the only way ice produces sound. There's also ridging, a process that happens when two sheets of sea ice collide and crumple together, forced upward by the pressure of their meeting. As the ice buckles and folds, it produces a grinding, scraping noise punctuated by sharp cracks as individual pieces shatter and break. Ridging can create pressure ridges that rise several meters above the surrounding ice, towering structures of jumbled, fractured ice that stand as testament to the immense forces at play. And then there's rubbing, the sound of ice sheets grinding against one another as they drift with the currents and winds. This produces a low, sustained rumble, almost like the sound of distant thunder or a train passing in the night. It's a sound that can go on for hours or even days, ebbing and flowing with the motion of the ice, a constant reminder that the frozen surface of the ocean is not static, but always in motion, always shifting and changing. In recent years, the sounds of ice have taken on a new significance. As global temperatures rise and polar ice begins to melt at an accelerating rate, the frequency and intensity of ice-related sounds are changing. More icebergs are calving from glaciers, more ice is fracturing and breaking apart, and more of the ocean's surface is being exposed to the air as sea ice retreats. Scientists are using hydrophones to monitor these changes, listening to the sounds of melting ice as a way to track the pace of climate change. The ocean is telling a story, and it's a story of transformation, of loss, of a world that is shifting faster than we ever imagined. The Antarctic soundscape in particular is dominated by ice-related sounds. The Southern Ocean is one of the noisiest parts of the world ocean, not because of biological activity, but because of the constant grinding and cracking of the ice that surrounds the continent. During the Austral winter, when the ice is at its thickest and the temperatures are at their lowest, the sound is almost constant, a deep resonant hum that fills the water and drowns out most other noises. In the summer, when the ice begins to break up and drift north, the soundscape shifts, becoming more chaotic and unpredictable as icebergs collide, fracture, and grind against one another. Listening to these sounds, to the voice of ice as it speaks through the water, is a humbling experience. It's a reminder that the ocean is not just a habitat for life, but a part of the Earth's climate system, a place where the atmosphere and the hydrosphere and the cryosphere all meet and interact in complex and often surprising ways. And it's a reminder that the changes we're making to the planet, the warming we're causing, are having consequences that echo through the deep, consequences that can be heard if only we take the time to listen. For most of Earth's history, the ocean's soundscape was shaped entirely by natural processes. Waves, wind, rain, earthquakes, volcanoes, ice, and the voices of marine animals all contributed to a constantly shifting acoustic environment that had evolved over millions of years. But in the past century and a half, a new sound has entered the ocean, and it's unlike anything that came before. It's the sound of human activity, and it's changing the ocean in ways we're only beginning to understand. The Industrial Revolution brought with it a dramatic increase in ocean traffic. Ships once powered by wind and muscle began to be driven by steam engines and later by diesel and turbine engines. These engines are loud, producing a low-frequency rumble that travels extraordinarily well through water. A single large cargo ship can produce noise levels exceeding 190 decibels at the source, and that noise can be detected by hydrophones hundreds of miles away. And there are thousands of these ships plying the world's oceans at any given moment, creating a constant background roar that has increased the ambient noise level in many parts of the ocean by 10 to 20 decibels over the past 50 years. This might not sound like much, but decibels are measured on a logarithmic scale. An increase of 10 decibels represents a 10-fold increase in sound intensity, and an increase of 20 decibels represents a 100-fold increase. In other words, the ocean is now, in many places, 10 to 100 times louder than it was a century ago, and this noise is not evenly distributed. It's concentrated in shipping lanes, in coastal areas, and near major ports, creating zones of intense acoustic pollution that can extend for hundreds of miles. The impact of this noise on marine life is profound. Whales, which rely on sound to communicate, navigate, and find food, are particularly vulnerable. The low-frequency rumble of ship engines overlaps almost perfectly with the frequencies used by baleen whales for long-distance communication. This means that a blue whale trying to call to another blue whale hundreds of miles away may find its signal drowned out by the noise of a passing container ship. The range over which whales can communicate, which once extended across entire ocean basins, has shrunk dramatically. In some areas, it's been reduced to a small fraction of what it once was, effectively isolating populations that were once in constant acoustic contact. This phenomenon is sometimes called acoustic masking, and it's analogous to trying to have a conversation at a crowded party where everyone is shouting. The signal, the sound you're trying to hear, gets buried in the noise, making communication difficult or impossible. For whales, this can have serious consequences. If they can't hear each other, they can't coordinate their movements, can't find mates, can't warn each other of danger. The ocean, once a clear and open channel for sound, has become cluttered and noisy, filled with interference that disrupts the very foundation of marine life. But ship noise is not the only source of human-generated sound in the ocean. There's also sonar, the use of sound waves to detect objects underwater. Sonar comes in two main types, active and passive. Passive sonar involves listening for sounds made by other objects, like submarines or whales. It's relatively quiet and non-intrusive. Active sonar, on the other hand, involves sending out loud pulses of sound and listening for the echoes that bounce back. These pulses can be extraordinarily loud, sometimes exceeding 230 decibels, loud enough to cause physical harm to marine animals at close range. Military sonar, in particular, has been linked to mass strandings of whales and dolphins. There have been several well-documented cases where naval exercises involving high-intensity sonar have been followed by strandings of beaked whales, a deep-diving species that is particularly sensitive to acoustic disturbance. The exact mechanism is not fully understood, but it's thought that the loud sonar pulses may cause the whales to surface too quickly, leading to decompression sickness, or that the noise may disorient them, causing them to swim into shallow water where they become stranded. Then there's the noise from offshore oil and gas exploration. Seismic airguns, used to map the structure of the seafloor and locate potential drilling sites, produce some of the loudest sounds in the ocean. These airguns fire compressed air into the water at regular intervals, creating intense low-frequency pulses that penetrate deep into the seafloor. Each pulse can reach 250 decibels, and during a typical survey, hundreds or even thousands of these pulses are fired over the course of days or weeks. The sound from seismic surveys can be detected hundreds of miles away, and it has been shown to disrupt the behavior of a wide range of marine animals, from fish to whales to invertebrates. Studies have found that fish exposed to seismic noise show reduced catch rates, altered swimming patterns, and even physical damage to their swim bladders and other organs. Whales have been observed to change their migration routes to avoid areas with active seismic surveys, and there is evidence that the noise can interfere with their ability to communicate and navigate. Underwater construction, including the building of offshore wind farms, pipelines, and other infrastructure, also contributes to the noise problem. Pile driving in particular is extremely loud, producing sharp percussive sounds that can exceed 200 decibels. Each impact of the hammer on the pile sends a shock wave through the water, and during a typical construction project, thousands of these impacts may occur. While efforts are being made to mitigate the noise through the use of bubble curtains and other techniques, the sound still travels far and can have significant impacts on nearby marine life. All of this noise, from ships and sonar and seismic surveys and construction, is fundamentally changing the acoustic environment of the ocean. It's making it harder for animals to hear, to communicate, to find food, to navigate. It's causing stress, disrupting behavior, and in some cases causing physical harm. And it's a problem that's only getting worse as human activity in the ocean continues to expand. But there's hope. Awareness of the problem is growing, and efforts are being made to reduce underwater noise. Ships are being designed with quieter engines, and shipping routes are being adjusted to avoid sensitive habitats. Sonar systems are being used more carefully, with better understanding of when and where they can be deployed without causing harm, and regulations are being put in place to limit the use of seismic airguns and other loud technologies in areas where marine life is particularly vulnerable. The ocean does not have to be as noisy as it has become. With effort and attention, we can create a quieter underwater world, one where the natural sounds of the sea can once again be heard clearly, where whales can sing across oceans, where the small creatures can chatter and click without being drowned out, where the Earth's pulse can be felt without interference. The ocean is speaking, and it's time we learn to listen not just to what it's saying, but to what we're adding to the conversation. As technology has improved, our ability to listen to the ocean has grown more sophisticated. Hydrophones have become smaller, more sensitive, more durable. They can be deployed in the deepest trenches, in the most remote regions, in places where no human has ever been, and likely never will be. And what they're revealing is both wonderful and humbling. The ocean is more complex, more varied, more alive with sound than we ever imagined. One of the most ambitious recent projects has been the deployment of long-term autonomous hydrophone systems in some of the deepest parts of the ocean. In 2017, scientists lowered a specially designed hydrophone into the Challenger Deep, the deepest point in the Mariana Trench, more than 7 miles beneath the surface. The pressure at that depth is more than 1,000 times greater than at sea level, enough to crush most human-made objects into twisted wreckage. But the hydrophone was built to withstand it, encased in titanium and ceramic, designed to record sound in an environment that is more alien than the surface of the moon. The descent took more than 6 hours. The hydrophone lowered slowly and carefully to avoid damaging the sensitive ceramic components, and when it finally reached the bottom, it began to record. For 23 days it sat on the seafloor, listening to everything that passed overhead, capturing sounds that had never been heard by human ears, and when it was finally retrieved, the data it brought back was astonishing. Even at that depth, 7 miles down in one of the most isolated places on Earth, the ocean was not silent. The hydrophone recorded the usual suspects: earthquakes rumbling through the crust, the distant calls of baleen whales filtering down from the surface layers, the low hum of ship engines passing overhead, but it also recorded things that were unexpected, sounds of unknown origin, faint and enigmatic, that didn't match any known source. The deep ocean, it seems, still holds secrets, still has voices we have not yet learned to identify. This is the frontier of ocean acoustics, the cutting edge of what we know and what we're trying to learn. As more hydrophones are deployed, as more data is collected, patterns are beginning to emerge. Researchers are using machine learning algorithms to sift through hundreds of thousands of hours of recordings, searching for signals in the noise, looking for sounds that repeat, that correlate with specific events, that might tell us something new about the ocean and the life within it. One of the challenges is simply the sheer volume of data. A single hydrophone recording continuously for a year can generate terabytes of audio files. Multiply that by dozens or hundreds of hydrophones deployed around the world, and you quickly end up with more data than any human could ever hope to analyze manually. This is where artificial intelligence comes in. Machine learning algorithms can be trained to recognize specific types of sounds, to distinguish between whales and ships, between earthquakes and ice, between biological signals and noise. They can process data at speeds that would be impossible for humans, identifying patterns and anomalies that might otherwise go unnoticed. This technology is already being used to track whale populations, to monitor the health of coral reefs, to detect illegal fishing activity, and to study the impacts of climate change on marine ecosystems. But it's also being used to explore the unknown, to search for sounds that we don't yet understand, that might represent new species, new phenomena, new insights into the workings of the ocean. And there is so much we still don't know. Despite decades of research, there are still sounds in the ocean that defy explanation. There are patterns that repeat on timescales we can barely comprehend. Events that happen once and never again, signals that seem to come from nowhere and disappear just as mysteriously. The ocean is vast, and our listening stations are few and far between. It's entirely possible, even likely, that there are entire categories of sounds that we have simply never encountered, processes and creatures that exist in the parts of the ocean we haven't yet reached. Some of these unknowns are almost certainly biological. The ocean is home to an estimated 2 million species, and we've only identified a tiny fraction of them. Many of the species we have identified, particularly those that live in the deep sea, have never been observed in their natural habitat. We know they exist because we've pulled their bodies up in nets or seen them briefly on video footage from submersibles. But we don't know how they live, what sounds they make, what role they play in the acoustic environment. It's entirely possible that there are creatures out there producing sounds that are so strange, so unlike anything we're familiar with, that we wouldn't even recognize them as biological. And there are also sounds that are almost certainly not biological, but that we still can't fully explain. The deep rumbles that seem to come from the Earth's mantle, the strange tonal hums that appear and disappear with the seasons, the brief, intense bursts of noise that light up hydrophone arrays for a few seconds and then vanish without a trace. Some of these may be geological, the result of processes we don't yet understand. Others may be meteorological, related to storms or currents or temperature changes in ways we haven't yet mapped out. And still others may be something else entirely, phenomena that we haven't even thought to look for. This is what makes ocean acoustics so exciting and so humbling. Every time we think we understand the ocean soundscape, we discover something new, something that challenges our assumptions and forces us to reconsider what we thought we knew. The ocean is not a static environment. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly surprising us. And as long as we continue to listen, continue to explore, we'll continue to learn. The goal, ultimately, is not just to catalog sounds, but to understand what they mean, to learn the language of the ocean, to interpret the signals and messages that are being sent every moment of every day, to understand how whales communicate across thousands of miles, how fish coordinate their movements in massive schools, how earthquakes shape the seafloor and influence marine ecosystems, to understand how the ocean is changing in response to human activity, to climate change, to the countless small and large disruptions we're introducing into this ancient system. And perhaps, in the process, to find a way to coexist with the ocean more peacefully, to recognize that we are not separate from this world, but a part of it, and that our actions have consequences that ripple outward in ways we can't always see but can certainly hear, if we take the time to listen. And so we come to the end of tonight's journey, though in truth, the ocean's story is one that never really ends. It continues, always in the deep places we cannot see, in the dark waters where sound travels farther than light ever could. The strange sounds of the deep sea, the whale songs and volcanic rumbles, the ice quakes and the mysterious signals that still defy explanation, they're all part of a symphony that has been playing since long before we were here to listen, and will continue long after we're gone. Tonight you've heard about the voices of giants, whales whose calls can cross entire oceans, whose songs evolve and change like living languages. You've heard about the earth itself, speaking in rumbles and groans, in the crack of ice and the boom of underwater volcanoes. You've heard about the smallest creatures, shrimp and fish and plankton, all adding their voices to the chorus. And you've heard about the human sounds, the engines and sonar and construction noise that are changing the ocean in ways we're only beginning to understand. But more than anything, you've heard about the mystery, the sounds we can't yet explain, the signals that appear and disappear, the voices from the deep that whisper of things we haven't yet discovered. The ocean is vast, far vaster than we can comprehend from the shore, and most of it remains unexplored. We've sent robots to the deepest trenches, lowered microphones to the ocean floor, trained algorithms to sift through years of recordings, and still, the ocean keeps its secrets. There are sounds down there right now that no one has ever heard, calls from creatures we've never seen, rumbles from geological processes we don't yet understand, signals traveling through the SOFAR channel, crossing from one side of the planet to the other, carrying messages we cannot yet decode. The ocean is speaking, constantly, in a language that is older than humanity, more complex than any tongue we've ever learned, and we are only just beginning to listen. This is what makes the deep sea so compelling, so endlessly fascinating. It's not just about the darkness or the pressure or the strange creatures that live in the abyss. It's about the unknowable nature of it all, the sense that no matter how much we learn, there will always be more to discover. The ocean holds mysteries that may never be fully solved, questions that may never be fully answered, and perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps some things are meant to remain mysterious, to keep us wondering, to remind us that we are small and the world is large and there is always more to learn. As you drift off to sleep tonight, imagine yourself floating in that deep water, suspended in the darkness far from any shore. The light has faded hours ago, and there's nothing to see, only the pressure of the water all around you and the faint sense of motion as currents move past. But the ocean is not silent. You can hear it, if you listen. The distant call of a whale, rising and falling in frequency, a voice reaching across miles of empty water, the low rumble of the seafloor, shifting and settling, the earth breathing beneath you, the soft crackle of shrimp in the distance, a chorus of small lives going about their business, and maybe, just maybe, something else, something faint and strange, a sound you don't recognize, coming from somewhere deeper still, somewhere beyond the reach of light or understanding. The ocean is full of these sounds, these voices from the deep, and they are always there, always speaking, whether we're listening or not. But tonight you listened. You took the time to hear what the ocean has to say, to learn about the strange and beautiful noises that fill the water from surface to seafloor. And perhaps, in doing so, you've gained a little more appreciation for this vast, mysterious world that covers most of our planet, this realm of sound and shadow and endless possibility. The whales will keep singing, long after you've fallen asleep. The volcanoes will keep rumbling. The ice will keep cracking. The earth will keep its slow, patient pulse. And the ocean will keep its secrets, holding them close in the deep, dark places where light cannot reach but sound travels forever. Rest now knowing that the ocean is out there, still speaking in its ancient tongue, still full of wonders we have yet to discover. Let the sounds you've heard tonight drift with you into sleep, soft and steady like currents in the deep. There's nothing you need to do, nowhere you need to be, just float, and listen, and let the ocean carry you gently into dreams. The mysteries will still be there in the morning, the sounds will still be traveling through the dark, and the ocean, patient and eternal, will still be speaking its truth to anyone willing to listen. But for now, let it all fade into the background, a soft hum beneath your thoughts as you sink deeper into rest, deeper into the quiet dark, where the only sound that matters is the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing, rising and falling like waves on a distant shore. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with the gentle voices of the deep.